So they say that in business, if you don't adapt, you die. So we're going to talk about the importance of pivoting in business, and I'm going to walk you guys through all the examples and the times that I've had to pivot within our business here in the insurance industry, with the point of really, or the purpose of just showing you guys kind of like the thoughts behind when I made these pivots and the changes I made. And obviously no changes are ever guaranteed to work, but there were times where you guys probably feel this, that things are just not working. And they do say that the definition of insanity is trying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So that being said, we'll jump right into it. I think if I go back to when I first got into the business and I started writing business, this is probably the first major pivot that I had to do. And it's actually really low level compared to the changes we've made now and implemented now. But I started writing final expense, door to door, face to face, and it was saturated. But everybody kept telling me that I should write final expense because it's very simple, which it is. It wasn't a lie. But we started running out of leads. So I heard that top producers were doing mortgage protection. At the time, mortgage protection had this cloud of being really complicated, and only if you're really, really good, only if you're writing 40, 50 grand a month and FEX, should you pivot to mortgage protection. Well, I said, screw it. FEX is getting hard because the leads are starting to suck. You've always heard no lead sucks. Every lead is a good lead. That is kind of subjective to how you're working. But if you're getting a lower quality than what you were before, there's typically something behind it. And I'm big on not ignoring the signs. So I pivoted to mortgage protection. That's probably the first I call major pivot. It was a major pivot at that point in time. In the grand scheme of things, it actually wasn't a major pivot. But they always say the most important move is your next move. And that was my next move. So pivoted to mortgage protection. I was able to go from writing, $15,000 a month to writing well over 25, 30 grand a month consistently, thanks to mortgage protection. That's a really small example of pivoting. But again, it was just simply because the leads started sucking. I was not getting the return that I once was. It was taking a lot more work for me to get the same results I was getting with a lot less work in the past. But again, just a tiny example of how you have to pivot. I think the next move that we had to do, it was far more impactful and far more significant to our business, was going from face-to-face to remote. Now, here's what happened. I got into this industry at a time where face-to-face was the main way to go. People were hitting Hall of Fame at the company we're at, so at least $400,000 in production, like nothing. Everybody was crushing it. But what happened is we started getting limited with the amounts of leads that we can get. So I talked about the leads, first of all, not producing as well. Well, the next step when that happens is we started getting less leads. So I would buy leads from lead vendors. Now we'll have to do it in the Tri-County area. So if you're in South Florida, you know what I mean. I would buy Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach, buy 30, 40 leads at a time. With those leads, I would just book appointments and go see them face to face. What started happening is that before I would place a lead order on Friday, by Monday, I had my 30, 40 leads. Now it was taking them nearly a week to fulfill. From that, then the lead vendor started creating like queues. Okay, you're going to put in your order, but you have 3 orders before yours. So it started going from like 3 days to a week to sometimes 2-3 weeks to fulfill. So what my uplines were teaching me at the time is you need to travel to sell. And I was recruiting very actively. So that was our pitch. Our pitch was, listen, if you like to travel, this is a perfect job because you get to travel across the country and be able to sell insurance. I myself traveled to multiple states. I went to Ohio several times. I went to North Florida several times. Well, the problem with that strategy was that a new agent, or even myself, you had to buy more leads because if you're traveling, you want to make sure you have a full schedule. You had to book a flight or drive far, rent a car, hotel, extra food. So honestly, it was really hard to succeed. Now, while most people were stuck on like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and this works. And then you will always see, obviously, the outliers that were killing it and traveling to Hawaii and writing 50, 60 grand in a month in a Hawaii trip. You know, everybody was running in that direction. I stopped and I just used my logical brain. And I'm like, if people buy insurance for their health, and like health insurance over the phone, they buy auto insurance over the phone or online, why can't we sell life insurance over the phone? You want a funnier story? Those of you that have worked life transfers in the past, I would take life transfers, but when you give them states, well, I didn't even give them states. I drew a line Palm Beach across to Southwest Florida, and I would get the call and I would utilize the 90-second buffer to try to convince them to book an appointment. I did that for probably the entirety of the first year. So it was really, and I can get down to the day I got into insurance, February of 2020. February of 2022, I went to a conference and I sat there and I was like, well, if I don't make a change, we're not going to have a business 6 months from now, which was very aggressive and maybe sort of dramatic at the time, but it was what it took for us to be able to make the change. So I went from having an office to going to my dining table, cut it off. I went to going to my dining table with 4 or 5 agents, started taking transfers, and started figuring out how to sell over the phone. Now, this is at a time where I'm already doing probably $300,000-$400,000 a month in sales. I've got, 75 agents. I was out of the field, but my business needed me to pivot because otherwise we would not survive. I made that pivot and we blew up overnight. We tripled our business and it changed us forever. So far I've walked you through 2 pivots that I had to do, both of them because the business dictated the pivot. I pivoted from writing FEX to mortgage protection. I pivoted from selling face-to-face to selling over the phone. If I keep going, the next pivot was probably bringing leads in-house. We tripled our business selling over the phone, but then just like anything else, we started hitting a ceiling, and the ceiling was really due to us running out of lead sources. All of a sudden, selling over the phone was very popular at every agency. Everybody's buying from the same lead vendors, and our leads started becoming harder and harder to get, even if it was for a phone. I had an agent that I interviewed and I met with to work with us, and the agent actually never worked with us, but he told me something that stuck with me forever, which was, if you control the leads, you control the money. I started realizing that one big gap we had in our business is that we don't control the leads because we're relying on third-party vendors. And today, you guys work primarily leads that we generate in-house. They're not perfect. You guys sell a lot of them. When you don't sell them, you hate them. When you do sell them, you love them. But I will tell you that it's taken me over 2.5 years of spending well over $1 million in ad spend and countless dollars in retainers, different people that I've hired to get to a point where we have a decent lead that you guys can work. That pivot has set us up for tremendous growth in the future. It's taking a long time. It was a lot more expensive than I thought it would be. Obviously, we're going through these pivots and there are different levels of pivoting, because in the beginning it was a simple change. Now we're talking about big expensive pivots, but same thing, adapting so we don't die. I think the psychology behind this entire thing is that when the business tells you, there's always signs that you cannot ignore, and you're struggling with something, a lot of times it's on you because there's things that you can control. But if you start doing everything under your control, then maybe there is a pivot that needs to happen. And one of the biggest things I can tell you about pivoting, before I tell you another example, is that I've never been a big fan of just listening to what everybody else is doing. I think that a lot of companies like to market to the masses, and if I send a general message to the masses, I might personally benefit from it, but you individually, everything is not one size fits all. So you always need to look at what works and what doesn't, and always use logic. But this only works if you're doing what you need to do, which is kind of like the first barrier, obviously, in getting good at any business, specifically this business. Another example of a good pivot is content. I'm sitting in our studio right now, and I started realizing that branding is a big deal. You started looking at some agencies that blew up, and everybody had a really strong brand and a strong presence on social media, a real actual strong presence, not corny content that people don't even want to look at, but content that made it cool and attractive to work with, and made it cool to even want to buy insurance from. So we started shooting content. That was kind of the first step, but we ended up just setting up Engage and bringing everything in-house so we can have full control and honestly just autonomy over the way we create content. And again, same content hasn't been perfect, it's been expensive, but we've gotten way better at it, and we'll continue to improve, because I think the idea is, how do we adapt to make sure that we have what we need to continue to succeed? Really important key is you always need to be 10 steps ahead. I pride myself in trying to study the industry and see what we need to do better, but I just gave you guys 4 examples of pivoting, the reasons why I thought we needed to pivot, and honestly, most importantly, how the pivots have turned out to be better for us. I am a big believer on milking something while it works, but I'm also a big believer in making sure we stay ahead. We are constantly implementing changes, and I think if you want to take anything from this video is you need to, 1, look at things through your own lenses and make sure that you're logical with it. Take a good look in the mirror and make sure that if something needs change, it's not because you need change, but because the actual business is dictating that change. And if it does need change, act quickly, because like I said earlier, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Now, this was quick, straight to the point. I truly hope it helped. If it helped, please subscribe and leave a comment below. Tell me how it helped. Thank you.